Hey, what is up, mortals? Welcome to Season 2 Part 3 What If Deku Could Use 100% of One for All? I just wanted to greet you guys by just saying, sit back and relax, you're in for a treat. So, we begin. The next series of events to befall the students down at the base of the mountainside came falling down, one after another, like a line of tragic dominoes nudged by a cruel boot. A miasma of smoke began to fill the forest, incapacitating and entrapping several within its toxic grasp. All the while a fire burned. The flames an intoxicating cyan blew against the endless black void that was the starless night sky, and a lone figure entrapped in a straitjacket wandered ominously down an unlit path in the beast's forest. Take them down. The false brilliance of the title of hero. We, the Vanguard Action Squad of the League of Villains, will condemn them. Several kilometers off from the rest, a figure dressed in a dark blue coat, skin shriveled and dry like leather, stood with his hand pressed palm down against the surface of a tree. Blue flames emanate from his palm, starting a fire that seemed to spread from that tree to all of those around it, entrapping the encampment of students in a ring of scorching flame. Let's begin. Juzo would have grinned if he could. The odd, skull-like boy's tone merely holding an amused inflection as if to emulate a smile. Did Bakugo and Todoroki get so scared they fired off their quirks? Juzo, Kendo would scream, panic lacing her voice. Juzo's knees would collapse under the weight of his own body, and he would fall, limp as a corpse, to the ground with his limbs sprawled out around him. In an effort to save her classmate, Yui, from a similar fate, engulfed the girl in her enlarged fist, covering her own mouth with her opposing hand in an attempt to prevent herself from breathing in the poisonous cloud around them. Yui, don't breathe it in. It's poisonous, she'd cry. Meanwhile, a glowering aura would encompass Pixie Bob, and, just as suddenly, she would be ripped backwards off her feet by some foreign force before finding her skull pinned in between a large, battering ram-like magnet held in the hand by a shockingly large and equally wide woman with shoulder-length, reddish-magenta hair, large lips, and a light dusting of facial hair. At her side kneeled a green, scaly-skinned lizard man armed with a variety of blades and clothed to mimic the hero killer himself. Hey there, kiddos. Were you looking for us? Magni would flamboyantly announce. Now be good kids and don't take another step or I'll crush the head of this sweet little pussy cat. Tiger almost immediately launched into action, knocking the monstrous woman's weapon aside and clashing with an explosion of force. The large, cat-like man battered the woman with a flurry of blows, all which were taken with great strike, blocked, absorbed. Turning, Tiger would let a vicious roundhouse kick fly which Magni would narrowly avoid before striking back with a counterattack of her own that made Tiger slide back several feet. Damn it, predicting my cat combat moves, Tiger thought, dashing back in with claws bared and ready. Meanwhile, can you hear my telepath? Hurry up and come back to camp. I'm sorry, I don't usually know where you run off to. I'm sorry, Koda. I can't come save you. Come back as soon as you can. The young boy could only stare on in abject horror as the large man, draped in black and masked, steadily encroached on him, his voice deep, resonating, and full of promises of very, very bad things. I tried searching somewhere with a nice view, and I ended up finding a face that was not on our list. Hey, by the way, you've got a nice hat there, kid, Muscular would say, pointing a thick, meaty thumb at the mask he wore. Trade you for this lame mask? He would ask, grinning behind the porcelain. They made me wear this toy since I'm new, saying they couldn't get the shipment in time or something. Reaching up with his right hand, he plucked the mask off before casually tossing it to the side. Terrified at the large man, Koda turned to flee, tears of fear streaking down his freckled face. Kneeling down, the tall man shot off the ground like a bullet, shattering the rock where he had been standing before slamming into the wall with similar effect and dropping down to the ground in front of the small boy. Let me get a shot in to cheer up. Extending a thick arm, tightly wound with sinewy and thick, hardy muscle, strands of pinkish-red muscle wrapped around his arm, protruding from his skin and making his arm appear several times larger than previously. His killer grin visible from the shadows cast by the hood that he wore. Koda stared, paralyzed, at the man that had prematurely taken his parents from his years prior. Tears streaked down his face at the thought. "You," Koda whispered. Muscular reared back his fist, aiming to smash Koda into dust before a streak of lighting slammed into the muscle-bound villain with all the force of a train, catching him by surprise and sending him shooting across the cliffside and into the opposing wall with an explosion of air and rock. Midoriya, Koda would say, astonished at the arrival of the boy he had berated little more than an hour ago. The young, messy-haired boy gave him a smile. They don't know I'm here. Villains have attacked the camp and I'm here to save you and bring you back to the others, he said. He looked up when the villain who he had hit with a 100% smash not moments ago tore himself free of the rock, his body now a pulsating mass of pink muscle that made the man he was moments ago look short in comparison. That was a good hit, kid. He really sent me flying, ha ha. He giggled manically. Now I suddenly have the urge to attack you, he said. In the blink of an eye, Muscular had dashed from where he stood in front of the two young boys, bringing both of his fists down atop them with a rumbling crackle of rock. Muscular glanced at the spot in confusion. Only green lightning remained where Midoriya had been moments ago. The aforementioned young hero was now holding Kota to the right of where they had just been. Setting the boy down, he grit his teeth in frustration. Powering himself up with a surge of lightning, his top was reduced to shreds as he dashed forward to meet the power villain. Slamming his fist into the man's thick, muscled head, his eyes widened at the little reaction the man had as he simply grew larger and larger, bearing down on the green-haired boy with all the might of a god. He grunted as the villain swung a hook into his ribs and sent him flying into the mountainside. Grinning at his action, Muscular hardly had time to react as Midoriya was already down and back at it in the blink of an eye, throwing a jab-straight combo that the man sidestepped before the straight caught him directly in the face with ample force to throw him back into the wall. Not letting up, Midoriya would dash forward with a shooting drop kick that would take Muscular fully in the chest, powering him directly through the mountain and out to the other side. Mid-air, he balled up his right fist before shouting, "One of all, 1000%, Delaware Detroit smash." To Muscular, 1,000 fists would descend from the skies upon him, taking chunks of the man's fleshy armor before the final blow would strike him in the chest before sending him shooting down into the ground with enough force to flatten all the trees behind him and leave the man embedded several dozen feet into the ground beneath. Glancing down, Midoriya flailed his arms as he began falling straight down. He was going to die. This is the end, and it was going to be from gravity. Clenching his eyes shut, he opened them slightly when he felt a familiar cloth wrap his body before pulling him to safety on the cliffside. It was Shota Aizawa, and he had Kota safely at his side. It happened again, didn't it? The Eraser hero asked, cocking an eyebrow. Midoriya looked down at the remaining rags of the shirt he had been wearing, and at the large bruise that was beginning to form where Muscular had punched him. He could feel the broken bones shifting when he moved. He began. Eraserhead shook his head. "It's fine, tell Mandalay to relay the information to the others that the students have permission to fight, understood?" Aizawa asked. Midoriya nodded vigorously, and then leapt into action. "Before we get back into the story, I would like to say that we've got a second channel called Anime Deep Dive. Anime Deep Dive is a channel based on a variety of anime lore. If you are interested in content like this, make sure you click the icon on the top right corner or check the description below for a link to the channel. Now, with that out of the way, let's get back into the story. You, Spinner would yell, "Are not a real hero." In a streak of lightning, Midoriya would appear from the brush and with a single punch cause Spinner's abomination of swords exploded in a rain of daggers and swords. Spinner would gap in horror at his broken weapon before turning directly into a gut punch that would cause him to double over before a nimble roundhouse would knock him over and onto the ground. "Midoriya, where's Kota?" Mandalay would yell. "He's safe. Mr. Aizawa has him. He wanted me to tell you that it's okay if we fight. He wants you to tell that to everyone," he yelled. Dodging back, she would activate her quirk before stating to everyone within her range, "Attention, students. If you should run across any villain, you have the permission to fight. Stay safe." Magni would duck a hook aimed to take her head off her shoulders before a gut jab and uppercut would lay the large hero out on his back. A grin spanned her large lips as he retrieved her large magnet. Intent on turning Tiger's head into mush, she paused and glanced over. A flash of green and Magni was lifted off her feet and sent flying through several trees and into the distant forest. Midoriya looked down at his hand. He had controlled his power enough to not so much as bend any of the distant trees, but had put enough force into it to subdue the woman. "Midoriya," Mandalay would yell. He'd glance over, cocking an eyebrow in response. The woman had tears in her eyes as she relayed the information to him. "They took him, Bakugo," she said. His eyes widened. "What? When?" he exclaimed. "They snuck around while we were fighting. They took him in ragdoll," she said. Midoriya would look dumbfounded. The dissipating particles of that same portal from the USJ incident had already begun dissipating where Ragdoll had been laying moments before, as well as where he had knocked the magnet villain. His knees buckled as he collapsed. A thought washed over him like a cold wave from the ocean. The villains. They had won. They took Bakugo. "Yuo," Deku would bellow, voice fading into the breeze. "Thank you all for sticking around, and I hope that you enjoyed. Before you leave, we would just like to let you know that We the Celestials has many other channels for your entertainment and viewing purposes. All the information you'll need is right below here in the description, so feel free to check out all the other incredible projects our team creates. Secondly, on behalf of We the Celestials, I'd like to thank everyone involved in the production of today's awesome content. Their details will be in the description below. That's all for today's video, so goodbye and have a divine day.